Hey everyone, Rob here from Gunfather Milsim, bringing you a video today about a project gun that I just completed, the A&K M24, right over here. So when I first started with this gun, I did a review about 2 months ago. A buddy of mine, a guy on my team named Bernie, loaned me this gun, said, hey, you should review it, because he really was impressed with its performance. He has like several of them. He ultimately just gave it to me. He said, you know what, why don't you just do a project gun with it? And by then I was so intrigued, I thought, oh, what the hell, I'll do a project. So here we are 2 months later. Finally got a chance to get out on the field last Saturday. Me and my team members had a real quick skirmish with just 10 players, but it was a great time. It was good to get out there again. And it was an opportunity for me to do a little bit of testing with this gun, at least enough that I feel like confident I can talk about it as a completed project and give you guys some helpful information. So when I did my review initially, I said it's a great gun with really solid internals, but you're going to probably have some problems getting the FPS limits up to something that is fieldable. And by fieldable, I mean something north of 530 FPS. Most fields, your limit is 550 FPS with 0.2 gram BBs, which is 2.8 joules-ish. All right. I'm going to talk a lot about FPS in this video. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of joules. I know what joules are. I know how joule creep works and blah, blah, blah. You guys talk about that shit to ad nauseum. So for simplicity's sake, I'm going to stick with, if I give you a reference to any sort of FPS, it's a reference to just with .2s. Yes, I know nobody shoots .2s out of sniper rifles. I shoot .45s. I get it, but it's easy just to speak about .2s, so we're going to do that. All right? So this gun, I had it sitting right about 460 with the 150 spring it came with, the M150 that it started with, 460 FPS. Obviously, that is way too low to be fieldable for a sniper rifle, where we can go all the way up to 550 is pretty much the national average. And trying to find a spring that could fit inside that really narrow piston proved to be very difficult. I bought I think 3 different springs, 160s, 170s, and all those springs were just a little bit too wide to fit effectively in that small piston. Ultimately, what I went out and did was I had a machinist mill out that piston. I'll throw some pictures in here so you guys can see the before and after. He took like I think a 0.5 millimeter off each side or something like that. I think it was a 0.5 millimeter total. But it cost me $40. Cool guy, got done. When I brought that piston back and I put a 160 spring in it, it only went up 10 FPS, because the concern was, well, maybe the spring, because that spring that I was using was real tight fit. And the concern was that as the spring compresses, obviously it expands, and that expansion was not allowing the spring to use its full spring travel. Turned out that was true to a degree of 10 FPS, so not that much. So I'm like, well, what else is going on here? Well, the cylinder on this gun has a very, very large cylinder compared to a VSR-10. It's I don't know how much percentage larger it is, but it's larger than a VSR-10 cylinder, and it's much longer but narrower. And because it has a longer cylinder, that piston has a longer distance to travel, and thus your standard springs are not going to work. They're too short. Okay, so you understand what I'm saying here. If I would take the cylinder and I would put the spring guide, the spring in there, and then the piston in there, as it would rest with the spring fully extended, the piston head is just at the end of the cylinder. Okay, so even at full, when it should be several inches above, and you should have to push it down so it's under tension. So basically, that spring isn't even under tension when it's fully extended at all, because the cylinder's too damn long. So the solution I came up with is I took the M160 spring that was way too tight, that I had milled out to make it fit better, and I took the M150 spring that came with the gun that was way too weak, and I cut that down about a third of it, and I used that third of that spring as a spacer. So when I put that third of a spring on there, it jumped the FPS all the way up to 586, and it was a real consistent 586, which was good that I had that consistency. Obviously 586 is way hot. Well, then I just had to start cutting down that spring, coil by coil here and there until it got it dropped down to 549, which is what I stuck with, because that's right up by 550, which is kind of where I wanted to be. Pretty easy solution. So much so that for future reference, anybody trying to upgrade one of these, I wouldn't bother milling out the piston, save your money. And I would just buy another M150 spring that'll fit better in that piston. And then just cut down the factory spring down to ended up being about a quarter is what I ended up using. And see where that puts you. I'd start with, half, and then start cutting off coils until you get down to the FPS you want out of this gun. That is a good solution. It seems to have worked so far. I haven't had any problems. I've shot it quite a bit, several hundred shots through it, and no malfunctions whatsoever. So that solved the FPS problem. Once I solved the FPS problem, then you can move on to, accurizing it. Main thing I did for that purpose is top dead center mount, which is a little screw up there, obviously. For those who are unfamiliar, basically all that does is it makes sure that you're pushing straight down on the hop-up lever, because the factory kind of lever goes up and over, and it can put too much pressure on one side of the hop-up arm than the other, and therefore your BBs are always going to curve and blah, blah, blah. I didn't shoot it enough to see if that was really a problem. I just always do that upgrade anyway. It's just easier. I did find with the factory hop-up lever that it just wasn't able to put backspin on the .45s anyway, so screw up, we're going to do top dead center mod. So I did that myself. Upgrades I did do Maple Leaf Autobot, what they used to call the Autobot bucking. I forget what they call it now. The Wonder bucking, I think. It's the one for range. 70 degree bucking. I put a 6.03 Mad Bull Type Bore barrel, which was unbridged. Now, why did I use a Mad Bull Type Bore barrel? Why wouldn't I go with a really expensive one? Because it's a project gun, and I'm trying to keep the price really low. I want to see if I can make a sniper rifle that can hang with the VSR-10 affordably. So, and I also put the same Maple Leaf hop-up arm in this gun that was in my VSR-10, and that thing cost $8. The hop-up rubber was $12. So $20 in, and then a spring, which is another $10. So basically I got about $30 for the parts in this gun, and that's it. And for the money, it performs very, very, very well. In fact, not even for the money, because when I went out and tested this rifle on Saturday, it turns out it outshot my VSR-10. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. First off, when I did my testing, when you test airsoft sniper rifles or whatever, you got to have some sort of way to measure. Okay, that's this basic science stuff. So here's my laser rangefinder. This is a cheap one. I think when I bought it, this thing was like $300, but now you can get these a lot cheaper than that, and you do not need the nicest laser rangefinder in the world for airsoft distances. You really don't. The difference between a $1,000 rangefinder and a $150 rangefinder is going to be the same at those ranges. It's just, don't worry about it. Get something cheap. But if you're going to talk about, I shot this guy at this range, or this gun shoots this far, or whatever, you got to measure it with something other than your eyeball or I walked it out. And that's whenever anybody in the airsoft context makes a claim about a range that they shot somebody or whatever, I say, well, did you laser range find it? Well, no. Well, then what you're saying is irrelevant, because you don't know. So if you're going to brag about shit, get a laser rangefinder and confirm it. I'm pretty good at estimating range, and whenever I have a laser rangefinder, I find I'm off all the time. I'm like, oh, that's like 80 yards. No, it's 100 or whatever. So figure out how far you're actually shooting things. So ultimately, we decided to do a real quick test comparing the performance of my tried and true VSR-10 and this new project gun, the A&K M24. Now, my VSR-10, this gun has been around forever. I talked about it quite a bit on different parts of the channel. It performs very well. It's tried and true. It's probably the only thing factory on it still is the barrel and the actual receiver. Everything else has been replaced because VSR-10, there's lots of parts for them. And it's easy to do that, to replace everything. So, does have a factory hop-up unit, but it has the same hop-up rubber as the A&K M24. That would be the Maple Leaf 70-degree Wonder Bucking, and it has the same hop-up arm. This one does have the Maple Leaf Crazy Jet barrel, which I did a review on, which is a very good barrel, very affordable barrel. The A&K M24, on the other hand, has a 6.03 Mad Bull barrel. So how do these two stack up when I actually shot them? Well, it turns out, basically what we did, we had a buddy of mine named Phil, a member of our team. He was nice enough to go up this hill, and I'll throw a picture of him here. And in the background, you see a big hill. That's the hill he was standing on top of because there was a lane. It was a pretty good lane. Now, yes, shooting uphill, you're going to lose a little bit of range, but not that much. And it was nice because then you could really see the path of the BB as it went up the hill. So I got my laser rangefinder and had him set at 100 yards, and we started shooting at him with 0.45 gram BBs. First, I started with the A&K M24, and then I went to the VSR-10. And we found at 100 yards, we just didn't quite have the range. The BBs were dropping just a few feet in front of them. It just couldn't get all the way out there. Now, I'm confident if we were shooting straight, flat, and level, we'd have hit them fine. But going uphill just wasn't happening. So at that angle, we were sitting at about 90, 95 yards was as far as we could shoot. And those last couple of yards, that's when the accuracy goes to shit and the BBs start going everywhere. That's normal for every sniper rifle. I don't care who you are. So we found realistically about 80, 85 yards, we were pretty much dead on, and then it would start to fall off. Now that's with this gun, which is shooting 549 FPS with .2s. By contrast, the VSR-10 shoots about 530. That's because it has a shorter barrel. Shorter barrels have no effect on accuracy or range in airsoft. That's a myth. The reason I'm shooting this one at 530 is because of joule creep, and thus it doesn't go over the 2.8 joules, which is the limit. It's for safety purposes. So this one does have 20 less FPS with .2s, but it's kind of a wash when you're shooting .45s. Not going to get into the math. Just trust me on it for now. So why did the A&K M24 appear to have about 10 yards more range than this? 10 yards, 5 yards, whatever. I do not think it's because this gun is garbage, the VSR-10. I think it's that because I haven't tuned that gun in a while. It's because I haven't had a frame of reference. And like everybody else, you shoot something, oh, it looks pretty far. It looks pretty far. But until you have something to compare it to, you don't realize that, okay, well, apparently this gun, since I've been lazy and not tuning it, it's kind of lost some of its consistency and some of its accuracy. So I can tell you I'm probably going to put a new hop-up bucking in there in the near future, take it apart, lube it up, clean it out, and make sure everything's cool. And once I do that, I'm confident that they're going to be neck and neck with range and accuracy. Now, where does that leave us? Well, VSR-10 built like that costs about $500. Base gun is like $300 plus another 200 parts, hell more than that. It's probably more like a $600 gun minus the scope. This gun, I just checked eBay today, the A&K M24, on sale for $109. Jesus, that is cheap. This level of performance for $109, I put in maybe another $30 spring and hop-up parts, and you're off to the races. This thing is awesome. This thing shoots lights out, and it was out shooting my VSR-10. That's a lot of performance for the money. Now let's talk about some specifics on this project and how it worked out. This is a cheap scope I had lying around. This is just some cheap leapers. I think it was like $105, something like that. And some cheap UTG rings, so I don't know, $110 for that. I did have to upgrade your scope rail because the one that comes with it is non-standard one. I talked about that previously. The paint job, kind of proud of this paint job. I've done a lot of paint jobs on guns over the years, and I tried different things over the years. You can see that it's similar to what I did on the VSR-10. The pattern is just different because I used a different size net. I just went to Walmart and I picked up a laundry bag. These cost like, I don't know, $7. Use them forever. And I found I was able to achieve this nifty pattern. I used 3 different shades of brown. So I start with the lightest shade of brown, which is more like a tan, and do the whole gun with the lightest shade, and then you lay down the netting and you just do kind of patterns with the medium shade and the darker shade. And then the thing I did different this time, and the way I get this really kind of nifty pattern there, that nifty kind of faded snakeskin crap, is I came back after I did the darkest color, the dark brown. I came back and put the netting over it again and hit it again with the medium brown, and that kind of gave it that depth. And I just kind of stumbled upon it trying different stuff, and I'm probably going to do that in the future. Sling mount, I don't like using traditional slings, especially on airsoft guns. I just use the cheap paracord sling mount that I make. It's nice. It lets me wear a 1 point, and all it's there to do is keep the gun from going in the dirt. So if I gotta mess with my radio or take a drink of water or anything, I can just let the gun go and the muzzle's not gonna hit the dirt. That's all it does, and it serves that purpose well. The only complaint I have on this gun when I went out, actually played a couple rounds with it, is of course the magazines. These things are garbage. Now, do they feed every time? Yes. Do they load easily and unload easily? Yes. So in that respect, I guess they're not garbage. They're actually pretty good. The problem with them is they only hold 15 rounds, 15 to 20. And they're not the easiest to load, not the smoothest. They're a lot more difficult than the VSR-10 magazines. Is it doable? Yes. I only had 3 of them, and I was running out of ammunition both games I played using this gun. So probably want to buy 2 more. Fortunately, they're cheap. I would give, if you're going to shoot a lot, you're going to want to have 4, 5, 6 of them. And I just wish they had a magazine, and they don't. I looked all over the place. I wish someone would make a magazine that carries like 25 or 30. It'd be a lot easier. But once again, fed flawlessly every time. No complaints there. As a side note, there is another member of my team, Joe, and he likes doing airsoft sniping and DMR and stuff like that. And he has a Novritsch SSG10, and I believe he has the SSG10 as well. But his SSG10 is what he had out there that day. Gun is stock with the exception of an R-hop. He just bought it to see what it was like. He was right there with me shooting at Phil up the hill with his gun, and he found that gun, which is right at 550 FPS, or no, it's like 540 FPS, was no more or less accurate than the A&K M24. It was hanging with it shot for shot. And him and I actually shot at each other quite a bit that day because he was on the opposing team quite a bit, and neither one of us was having infinitely more success than the other one. So, that SSG10 is like $300. This one's $109. I know what I'm going to recommend to people in the future. So that's it. That's the A&K M24 Project Gun Complete. Once again, buy the gun right now on eBay for $110 and $30 in upgrades, a little bit of paint, $100 scope, and you're going to have yourself a great sniper rifle for under $250. Can't recommend it enough. Get any questions or comments, put them below. Thanks for watching.